So I was going to do a different video for you guys this week, something fun and light. In the very first video, I had told myself that this is going to be a place where I was going to be more real with y'all. And so I decided to listen to myself and do the thing, even though it is hard. So today we're going to talk about my history with depression and hopefully just destigmatize it a little bit. September is Suicide Prevention Month, so I thought it would be a timely video. I think there is such a tendency to hide the messy stuff, and hopefully by talking about my story and normalizing my feelings and also talking about the steps I took to get better, hopefully that will help somebody who is feeling in the same position that I was and just feel less alone. So I remember feeling my first feelings of depression when I was in middle school. Feelings of inadequacy, feelings of extreme sadness and anger, feeling like I was not good enough. I feel like it's very common in the Asian American community to put a lot of pressure on their children, especially if they are first generation immigrants. And so I definitely internalized a lot of that and started putting a lot of pressures on myself to be the best in everything. These feelings in middle school were also compounded by the fact that I changed schools almost every year. I was on the receiving end of a lot of bullying. Needless to say, middle school was just very difficult. So going into high school, there was a girl. She was an upperclassman, I was a lowerclassman. I just idolized her. I thought she was like the best, the coolest, the prettiest. She like had all the friends. When I was, I think, a sophomore or freshman, she went missing, and it turned out that she had committed suicide. So that was the first time that I ever really grappled with suicide and that was potentially an option. I think it just put a little seed in my brain of like, this is potentially a way out. By the time I got to college, I was really good at hiding it and started, drinking, and found that that was a really good way to mask your depression. By the time I was a junior and senior, it became a lot more difficult to mask. I was using food, or I guess the absence of food, to starve myself. I also started physically harming myself, cutting, just really trying to punish myself for not meeting the standards that I had set. Aside from the self-harm that I was doing, I was also seriously contemplating suicide and was really just actively thinking about ways that I could end this world of pain that I didn't see any way out of. So it was at this time that something really needed to be done, and this was when my friends stepped in and really saved my life. And they really came together and told me, look, we notice what's happening to you and we think that you need help. I have to admit that at this time I was not open to receiving that, but they called like the local mental health department, I'm not sure what it's called, on campus, and made an appointment, physically dragged me there kicking and screaming. I think I was internally kicking and screaming to this therapy session, and ended up going to therapy. And through therapy was able to really figure out what it was that my depression and suicidal thoughts were triggered by. Something that also made it increasingly difficult was I came to my mom and I told her that this was something that I had been dealing with for the past 8-10 years. And she was really dismissive about it. She said, you're being dramatic, but you're not suicidal, you don't have depression, that's not a real thing. I mention this not to blame my mom. I think my mom is amazing. We have an incredible relationship. Years later, she actually apologized for the things that she had said. But I mention this because I feel like this is very common, especially in the Asian American community, to belittle and to not normalize these feelings of depression, anxiety, suicide, whatever they may be. I really feel the importance of being able to talk about it, to be able to listen to one another, and to also meet that person where they're at, instead of dismissing their feelings, to be able to say, your feelings are real, and that sounds really hard. Now what can we do to get you the help that you need? I think those types of conversations are much more constructive and helpful for people like me to be able to get out of those situations and start getting the help that they need. So if this is something that you're going through, I just want to encourage you and remind you that you are not alone and that you are loved. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You can receive help and you can get through this. Some practical ways of getting through this are to find someone who is a trusted person and really just share how you feel. Another resource is, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of therapy. Whether you are going through the darkest of days or you're just a normal person, everyone can benefit from therapy. I have been in and out of therapy for the past 10 years. It's always beneficial, and so I highly recommend going to therapy. Also, if it is something that is more physical, chemical imbalance, I definitely recommend going to see a doctor, psychiatrist, somebody who can help you get those levels balanced. My husband's a doctor. He's gonna be like, you're not talking about this in the right way at all. And lastly, something that you can definitely work on in therapy, but also on your own, is being able to identify those triggers and then change them into healthy habits. For me, things that I have found are helpful are getting up, getting moving, getting exercise, getting outside, getting in the great outdoors, also taking my vitamins, eating well for the most part, taking vitamin D, and just making sure that your body is in the best possible form so that your mind can be as well. Also want to stress the importance of community. It's very likely that there is someone in your life who struggles with depression, and so I just want to remind you to be there for one another, to look out for one another, to listen to one another, and to love one another. I'm also going to leave some resources and numbers in the description box below, so if you are feeling like you may be a harm to yourself, I highly recommend to make that call. It is not as scary as it feels, I promise, and hopefully that can be the first step in getting you to being in a better place. Thank you so much for listening to my story. This one was a very personal one, but I really hope that this brings encouragement to some of you and helps you feel like you are not alone, because you're not. Okay, that's all. Love you guys so much. I will be back next week with a much lighter video. I'm gonna do a capsule wardrobe video, so hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you next week. Bye! Also, highly recommend the use of an emotional support animal. Should my dog just be a part of all my outros? Should that just be a thing? Bye!